back to Global Education Zone. And today in this episode, we're going to be dealing with getting rid of Excel formula errors. So when we're trying to get rid of Excel formula errors, there are a couple of things you need to know and keep in mind. So basically, let's start with an example of data that we are going to use to show Excel errors. So now, for those of you who know elementary mathematics, you would have learned about interest, simple interest, and compound interest, right? So now this is basically an Excel sheet that calculates compound interest for us, and then we have the time, and then we have the rates. Rather, it calculates the compound amount. So basically, you have three different people. So let's call them investors. Let's just index them like investors 1. Down to avoid the stress of writing investor 2. Then we have investor 3. We have investor 4. Okay, that's 4. Then we have investor 5. So these 5 investors, investor 1 started with a principal of $50,000, and let's assume investors 2 started with a principal of $60,000. Investor 3 started his business with a principal of $25,000. Investor 4 started with 70. Okay. With $30,000, and then investor 5 started his business with $65,000. Oh, that's a dash $1,000. So now we are good to go. Now the next thing to do is basically you talk about the time. We'll talk about the time taken for each of the investments. So basically, investor 1 invests for, let's say, 3 years. Investor 2 invests for 5 years. Investor 3 invests for 7 years. Investor 4 invests for 3 years. Okay, I'm unconsciously following odd numbers. So now, assuming they actually invest in a particular bank, so we have our rate. Assuming we have a rate of 20%, 20% on the first 5,000 naira, and then we have a rate of 10% on the next 5,000. So each of them will have a first rate of 20%. So this is kind of like a little bit of a kind of intermediate mathematics, if you like. So let's call this rate 1. That's the general rate. Then the rate 2 is for those who have above 5,000 naira. So I just felt like doing this. So now we have their rate as for this one. It has 20,000. The rate is actually 10%. So basically, we could put the unit here as 10. This is the unit here. Let's have the unit here as 10. The unit is that percentage. Okay, let's have it as percentage. So I don't need to begin to put the percentage in data. So the time is in years. We have a time in years. Time investment. You have the principal in let's call it we have it in dollars. So and then so far we are good to go. Now this is our data. Actually, I could shift it to the right a little bit. So I'll just select each one. Command X. Control X rather. Then I would select from here to the next and command V. So that's one way of shifting your data. So I just fancy putting borders around it because it looks like an official table, basically, in my opinion. So let's move it to the right a bit. Now we are looking for just one thing. We are looking for the compound amount, and we'll need to specify a very thickly sized formula for this. So just stay with me and let's understand this through. So now the next thing for me to do is I will insert my borders. So I'll just go over here and insert all borders. So it's quite simple to do. Now the next last thing I have to do is I want to calculate the amounts. So this is the amount each of them will earn at the end of the day. So now one thing you guys need to understand is that in Excel formulas sometimes we set up conditions. So these conditions, there are things that Excel will do depending on the value in each of the cells. So now remember I earlier I said if a person has above 5,000, a principal of above 5,000, then for the remaining 5,000 of the principal, you will have a rate of 10% instead of 20%, right? So now, those of you who remember the formula for compound amount, it's principal. So let's put equals to, let's calculate the value of compound amount. So that is equals to the product of principal. So let's reference this C3, that's principal. Then C3 will multiply 1 plus. So if you remember, this is the formula you were probably taught in secondary school or high school. So that is the compound interest amount formula. So 1 plus the 1 plus rate over 100. So let's call this E2. Let's also put that in a bracket. E2, E3 over. So this will be our divide. We need a divide by 100. So close the bracket for that. Then we'll need to raise this to the power of the time. So I wonder where the raise to power symbol is on this keyboard. So let me check. Okay, finally, I'm lucky. Luckily, I saw it. That is on 6. Yes, on 6. So now that will be raised to power of the time. That will be here, which is 3 years system. Now this is a rather complex formula. For those of you who are not very mathematically inclined, I know this might be a little bit of a challenge to understand, but just stick with me, bear with me, and you will get it. So now let's click enter, and we have a ref formula. So now this is an example of an Excel error in that I'm actually referencing a wrong cell. So let me see what's going on. So you can see it in the formula bar here. So let's see what's going on here. So in the formula we have equals to C3. So I can actually okay, we have equals to C3. So this C3, so this is it right here. Okay, equals C3 plus C3 times 1 plus E3 over 100. Okay, then raised to the power of D3. So obviously I did not put a multiplication symbol here. Let me do that. Maybe that could have been the cause of the issue. So this is kind of like a debugging. So those of you who are aware of coding, in coding you often do this process of code debugging. That's kind of like reading your formulas of errors. So now actually the issue was that I did not put a multiplication symbol. So in mathematics I was assuming that mathematics is going to be the same as it is here. So but in this case, in mathematics, if you have a pre-multiplier, you don't need to include a multiplication symbol. Those of you who have a little bit of knowledge of mathematics, but in this case Excel will not have any of that. So that means you need to put every of your symbols. You cannot omit any. So now if I copy this formula down, I would get good values. So now look at these values, but they do not obey my condition. Like for if I check for the investor 2, see that it's still the compound interest we're calculating. So we're not taking care of these extra amounts. Yeah. So basically we need to add 10%. Each of them is going to earn 10% of the money that is greater than 6,000. So I will modify that formula now. So I'll just go to the formula here, and I will need to add an amount. So for those who have invested above $5,000 or $50,000, they would have an interest of 10% on the additional amount. So sorry about that. So now for those of the investors who actually invested more than $50,000, they will have an interest of 10% on the extra one. So for the investor 2 year, he invested $60,000, right? So he has an extra $10,000 invested. So what we need to do is we need to calculate an interest. We'll add an interest of 10% on that additional money. So let's do it like this. So since this is 50,000, yeah, we can just reference this, right? So right, that's what you think, right? Okay, let's see how that goes. Okay, let's reference this then. So for the simple interest, the formula for simple interest is principal times time times rate divided by 100, right? So yeah, in this case, our principal is the difference between this. So let's reference this cell. Difference this cell and the cell before it. So that will give us the deviation of the invested money from 50,000 naira. So that will be our new principal. Then multiplied by the time taken is still that 5 years. We'll see our time of 5 years. Then multiplied by the rate. In this case, our rate will now be 10% because this is a bonus. So we are reducing the rate slightly so we don't run at a loss, right? So basically, moving on, we will now divide every of these, the total of these, divided by. So we need a slash. Okay, yes, that's slash. Divided by 100. I used to have issues with the symbols on this keyboard. They're quite difficult to. No, I don't accept it. They was asking whether I accept their correction, which I don't, because obviously I'm not done writing my formula. So now I've added this multiplication to the formula. So obviously you can see that we have this equals to the multiplication of the principal, which is 10,000, which I mentioned it was different between the invested and the 50,000. We can even add that formula here, mind you, and it won't affect it. It will not change our result. So we are calculating on the excess of this. So, but the issue is that there's an issue you will be able to know. So let me click enter. Now this is something we can copy that down. So you will see that they will have a slightly increased value. Obviously, yes. So especially for this last person who well, the issue is since we are using 10%, let's copy that down 10% to the lowest. So yes. So let me see the formula here to verify that. D4 times 10. So instead of 10, we could have just entered F4 and it will keep referencing that. So but let's just use 10. So that being done, I guess that's okay. So if we try to do that upward, let's see what goes on. What happens? It gives us an error, right? So let's see what's going on here. So in this case, look at what Excel has done. Excel has changed from C3 to C3 minus the cell before C3. That's C2. So Excel thought I was subtracting a cell from the cell. I was subtracting a cell before the cell from the cell. So wait, I hope you understand that. Excel actually thought I'm subtracting the value inside the preceding cell from the cell that I am actually in. So that is for this row. For each of these rows, the value here is tied to the cell that is on that horizontal row. So Excel thought I was doing it sequentially. So which is not the case. I'm actually tying my value at C3. So in this case, the solution to this error is using an absolute referencing. So in this case, I'll go back to my first formula, which I copied up and down, and then I'll insert an absolute reference on this C3. So I want it to be absolute, and that will be done with the dollar symbol. So I'll insert absolute before the C, which is the column number, because I don't want it to change, and then absolute before the row number. So when we click enter, we should be able to have. Let's see what goes on here. C3 minus C2. So I obviously haven't copied the change formula. So let's copy the change formula here. Let's copy the change formula here. So bravo, it rectified it, and I can assure you, if you verify this with any mathematical formula or any mathematical instrument, you will still get the correct answer. So this is a formula that I invented. So okay, I literally didn't invent it. I just derived it up rather. So but it's a very smart thing, I guess. So basically, this is my own way of avoiding Excel errors. So in the course of this practice, I've come across some errors like referencing error. So where I was actually referencing the wrong thing. But as the lesson for this video, I want to let you guys know that there are actually three major types, not the only types rather. Three major types of errors you come across when manipulating Excel formulas. And this type of errors, they are errors that are involving when you are referencing another cell and that cell does not have a value, or that cell is a null cell. So you can have an error in that. And then you can also have an error when you are actually referencing a cell. It's kind of like a boomerang. So in this case, if I typed a formula here and I said if I'm typing the formula in cell H3 and I say H3 equals to this equals to okay, Excel won't even let me do that. Equals to, it won't let me except I type it manually. It's equals to H3 plus 5. So this kind of like I'm referencing a cell in I'm referencing a cell with respect to itself, its own self. I'm saying H3 equals to H3 plus 5. So let's see what happens. I definitely will have an error. So this is one of the sources of errors on Excel. So it says there are more than one circular references. Yes, aha. So it's called a circular reference, where a formula refers to its own cell rather than either directly or indirectly. This might cause them to calculate incorrectly. So I'll click OK and let's see what goes on. It actually gives me 0. So basically Excel does not tolerate that. So the solution to that is instead of defining a cell in terms of itself. So for example, if we had 5 here, I wanted to increase this by 5. Just say 5 plus 5. So you cannot reference a cell in terms of itself. So actually, this isn't even a formula. So I guess that does it for today's lesson, and hopefully you have learned one or two things on Excel errors, and hopefully you will not make any of the errors I made in this video. And I hope to see you next episode.